Hey, what's up, NOLE Nation and fellow college football fans? Welcome back to Nole Hard Feelings, your go-to source for all things FSU. Today, we're previewing the matchup between the Florida State Seminoles and the North Carolina Tar Heels. Can the Noles add to the win column, or will they suffer yet another loss? Let's dive in. So this is going to be the 22nd meeting between these two schools. FSU leads in this series 17-3 with one tie. And something interesting to note, two of those wins for UNC, they came on the road at Doak Campbell Stadium, with their last one being in 2016, where they won 37-35. So FSU enters this game as a 2.5-point home dog with a 3-5 record against the spread. Well, the Tar Heels are 1-6-1 against the spread. So both teams are not where they want to be, but a few plays go UNC's way, and they're actually 6-2 instead of 4-4. So UNC comes into this game with some momentum on their side, something the Noles can't say. The Tar Heels are coming off a road win over UVA, snapping a 4-game losing skid. They spotted the Cavaliers the first 3 points of the game, but rallied to close out the first half 24-6, and then scored the first 14 points of the second half to take a 41-14 victory. They're 4-4 on the year, as I said, but again, if a few of those calls had gone their way, they could be sitting at 6-2. Here's some interesting stats, something to think about. The UNC quarterback, Jacoby Criswell, he has more passing yards than DJ Uyunglele, Brock Glenn, and Luke Kromenhoek combined. He has 1,660 yards compared to the 1,537 yards the Noles have put up this year. But that's okay. FSU will turn them over, right? Well, in the last 4 games, UNC has only turned the ball over once, and that was an INT that was thrown against Duke 4 weeks ago. So they've been playing pretty good on the offensive side of the ball lately, not turning it over. FSU, on the other hand, well, they've only gained 3 turnovers on the year, while giving the ball away, I hate to say this, 13 times for a turnover margin of -10. That's an average of -1.25 a game. That's top 10 in the worst turnover margin in the nation. The only other teams worse than FSU are Kent State, TCU, Temple, UAB, New Mexico State, App State, and Southern Miss. So where will FSU end the year in turnover margins? Can they get some turnovers against North Carolina? Well, that's something to think about, something we're going to have to revisit at the end of the year. For comparison purposes, UNC has gained 8 turnovers and lost only 10 turnovers. Not good, but not as bad as Florida State. Now, the North Carolina Tar Heels, they got a great running back in Omarion Hampton. He has the 4th most rushing yards in the country with 1,006 yards on the ground and even 23 receptions for 172 yards for an average of 7.5 yards per carry on the ground. And again, for comparison purposes, how does FSU stack up to one of the North Carolina players, Omarion Hampton? Well, Florida State only has mustered up 643 yards as a team. Now, something Mike Norvell said earlier this week caught my attention, and perhaps maybe it caught your attention too. Now, he met with the media after practice on Wednesday, and he said, and I quote, "So, I thought there were some areas we got to be cleaner and better there offensively. You should have those guys hopefully back. here the next day or so. But, I thought we had some missed opportunities there. Just in certain position groups, they're on the offensive side of the ball. And then he had this quote. He said, offensively, should have those guys back hopefully in the next day or so. We'll see. Thought we had some missed opportunities there on certain position groups on the offensive side of the ball. Had some solid response, but not just as consistent throughout what we needed. So go to work, keep getting better. Now, sounds like there's some inconsistencies in practices, players probably not playing up to their potential. But you put on the field what you practice. And apparently, our practices this week, or at least the one held on Wednesday, was not good. Again, going off what Mike Norvell said. And so I think that lack of effort, that inconsistency that Mike was speaking to, some of those miscommunications, it's a result of a team that is demoralized. They just don't have much confidence. And they're in a tough spot. They just came out a blowout loss to their in-state rivals in Miami Hurricanes. And next week, they have a tough game on the road against a top 10 Notre Dame team. So this is a sandwich spot for the Noles. Very tough to be in. So with all that being said, let's get into my prediction. Now, I think both teams are going to move the ball, but with what we heard from Mike about Wednesday's practice and what we know about the two teams, especially with North Carolina having a great running back in Omari and Hampton, I think they should be able to at least move the ball a little bit more consistently than the Noles. Now, FSU, they have a decent pass defense, not great, but it's decent, it's solid. But I think that's largely in part due to just teams choosing to run the ball down their throat. They can't stop the run. They rank 105 in rush defense. So teams are just lining up and just moving the ball on the ground at will. And the Florida State defense is just choosing, it seems, to keep the ball in front of them in the defensive side for the DBs and not get beat over the top. And so I think Omari and Hampton and company, they should be able to move the chains and put Criswell, the UNC quarterback, in favorable spots, manageable down and distance on those third downs. Now, Criswell, he doesn't have to be the savior of the team in order for the Tar Heels to win. He just needs to make smart throws. If he feels the pressure, he needs to get rid of the ball so he doesn't take a sack. He can't throw INTs or a pick six. He can't fumble it, put the ball on the ground. Now, if he does that, and does it a number of times, and the Noles can capitalize on some of those turnovers, they might be able to win this one. But UNC has a good, solid kicker, and Noah Burnett, their senior kicker, he's 13 for 16 on the year. That's number 48 in the nation. He nailed a 52-yarder against Minnesota, as well as the game winner. So should the Tar Heels need a field goal, they're in good hands. And his number may be called more often than not in this game because the Noles, they seem to tighten up a little bit when they get in the red zone. They're ranked number 41 in red zone defense. Again, it's not outstanding, but it's not bad. It's pretty solid. Now, looking at the Noles, who's going to step up for them on offense? Who's going to be the player that you can consistently rely on to pick up those tough yards or make that big play? It seems like whenever Toafili gets going, Mike puts in another running back for some reason. Not sure what's going on there. We've seen, flashes from Loyan McCoy and even Benson at times, but nothing consistent from them. Ja'Kai Douglas, he'd be the one that I have to pick for a wide receiver who's been the most consistent, but he's not going to take over a game. Not with the quarterbacks we have thrown to him. And that's not a knock on Brock or Luke. I just don't think they have full control and understanding of this offense yet to take advantage of it. Now, at this point in the year, you would expect the Noles to have some form of offensive identity. Our offensive line coach, he can't even figure out which 5 offensive linemen to start. Every week, it's a new unit. Now, if you ever played football as a kid, on the street or in the backyard with the kids in your neighborhood, you normally, huddle up your team, gather them around you. And what do? You start drawing plays like on the back of your hand. And that's what it feels like FSU is doing here. Just kind of figuring things out as they go, hoping something sticks. And that's not a recipe for success, especially this late in the season. You'd hope to have more of an identity by now, but they don't. This yo-yo back and forth approach with the quarterbacks does not help to build chemistry with the team. Now imagine if you're the center in every other series, you have a new quarterback out there, you hear a new voice, just a new feel with a new quarterback. And now Mike's having to manage more things on the sideline when he has to keep going back and forth between Brock and Luke. It's just one more thing for him to have to deal with on the sideline. And he just needs to pick one player, one quarterback, like he did with DJU, and stick with him. And I'm not totally against a dual quarterback system. If it's used right, kind of like Mertz and Lagway at Florida, it can be successful, but that's not what's happening here. This is a train wreck. Now, they'll roll Glenn out one series and then keep him in for a couple, and then here comes Luke, and then Luke gets pulled quicker than Brock did, and then the end of the game, Miami, you had Brock coming in for the last 2 series. It's just no rhyme or reason to what's going on. Again, it just feels like they're just figuring things out as they go on the whim. So on to my prediction. FSU, they're a sinking ship. UNC, they're fighting for bowl eligibility. I think FSU will connect on some chunk plays, but offensively, they just don't have the firepower to keep up with the Tar Heels unless, as I mentioned, they get some defensive touchdowns like a pick six or a scoop and score or even a block punt that results in a short field. Now, if they can do this, I think they can win. But I wouldn't pick them to do this because, again, they've only forced 3 turnovers on the year. So it's really hard to see that happening as much as I would like it to happen. And as much as my heart, not my mind, but my heart thinks it will happen, I just don't see it. Now, I do think the Noles, they'll force a turnover, maybe 2. And I think they'll get some scores, maybe 2. I have them getting at least 1 score off a short field. But, Mike's going to end up going for it on 4th down too many times like he's proven. You're ruining our chance for points. Fuller, he's going to give up, a third and a mile probably, and there's going to be a number of penalties. Probably too many men on the field at least once. If that's not on your bingo sheet, you might want to add that. Now, I see the Noles, playing from behind most of the day, maybe a little bit back and forth. But I do see the Tar Heels pulling away in the 4th quarter. And Mac Brown, yes, getting his first win against the Noles, 31-27. So my bold predictions for this game, one of the quarterbacks, they're going to throw for over 250 yards. I do think we get a defensive touchdown, whether it's a pick six, scoop and score. And I think Fitzpatrick, he's going to nail a 50-yarder. Seems like he's due. But it's another week for the Noles, which means another loss. With that being said, let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings on this game? Can the Noles turn the corner and get a win? And if so, what has to happen? I look forward to your comments and down below. I'll catch you guys in the next video. This is Nole Hard Feelings, and I'm out.